Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Sports Beat with Richard Holdridge, presented by Georgia Alabama Sports Live. I hope you all are enjoying your Labor Day weekend as I am coming to you Sunday afternoon. This is going to be part of my episode 899 that's going to air on WQEE tomorrow from 2 to 3, as you can catch an episode every Monday through Friday from 2 to 3 on the Noonan Network, 99.1 FM up in Noonan, WQEE. Yes, this is going to be part of episode 899. Remember, I go a full hour. This portion of the show is going to be my college football recap, as we had our full weekend of college football. We still have a game later tonight. We've got LSU and USC. And then on Monday, we've got Boston College and Florida State. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to break down not only the local teams here in the Chattahoochee Valley, all the other FBS schools in Georgia, and some of the FBS schools in Alabama as well. I break down those games. I'll talk about some of the games during college football that caught my eye, that I do have some thoughts, and I'm going to share with you. I'm not going to get into too much detail about high school football because I'm going to save that for the scoreboard show on Tuesday. By the way, you can catch an episode of this show every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday on Georgia Alabama Sports Live's Facebook page and YouTube channel. Starting at noon on Tuesday's show, I'm going to break down all the games in the Chattahoochee Valley. We had a fun weekend on Georgia Alabama Sports Live. Thrip Behringer and Rick Beach were up at Harris County for the Harris County Carver Tigers game. Both teams coming into this contest 2-0. Harris County was able to get the 15-6 victory as they go to 3-0 on the season. I was down in Russell County on the call with Mike Peacock for Georgia Alabama Sports Live. It was a great back and forth game. Bryson Riggins had 2 touchdown passes. Devin Brown had 3 touchdowns, including a kickoff return for a touchdown. However, Russell County fell to Eufaula 34-21 as they go 1-1 on the season. And Georgia Alabama Sports Live's lineup kicked things off for high school football week 3 on Thursday night as Noah Shelton was on the call for Crawford County and Kendrick. Unfortunately, Kendrick fell to the Crawford County Eagles out of Roberta 24-7. There was also another game on Thursday night as Lovelet defeated Spencer 46-23. Other scores around the Chattahoochee Valley. Chattahoochee County ends up defeating Jordan 54-7. This was the upset of the night. Pacelli beats FPD 18-6. I was completely shocked because I thought that FPD was the better team. They were the defending 4A champions. We all picked FPD to beat Pacelli during high school game day. Northside continues their ways rolling as they defeat Northgate 22-0. Athens Academy over Shaw 48-14. You got a very close game between Calvary Christian and Mount DeSales. Mount DeSales ends up defeating Calvary Christian to get their first victory of the season, 7-6 down in Macon. How about the Glenwood Gators? 2-0 on the season in the AHSAA. They go to Elba, one of the top teams in 1A. They got the best running back in the state of Alabama, Alvin Henderson. They ended up defeating Elba 49-22. Randolph Clay ends up defeating Columbus 30-8. Hardaway ends up getting their first victory of the season as they defeat Greenville 19-18. Central, they ended up taking on one of the top teams in Missouri, the 6-time champion Lutheran North, and Central had no problem with Lutheran North 30-12. It was Valley over Smith Station 36-8. And Flint River ends up remaining undefeated as they defeat Skipstone Academy 27-6. We also had the LaGrange Grangers ended up losing to Sandy Creek 27-7. And that's pretty much it for now. I will go ahead and I will try to break down all those games on Tuesday's show for you. But let's not waste any more time. I want to talk about some of the college football games that happened over the weekend. And I was in front of my couch. I'm going to start with that first game. It was the Chick-fil-A, not the Chick-fil-A anymore. It's the All-State Kickoff Classic. It used to be the Chick-fil-A Kickoff Classic. And I'm going to start with that game. Georgia 34, Clemson 3. My thoughts on this game is it was a very good defensive game in that first half. I thought that Clemson had the dudes on defense to shut down Georgia's offense. I was impressed with Central's own TJ Parker, who got a big rush on a third down play to Carson Beck. And Georgia led 6-0 at the half. So good defense by both teams. And then Georgia proved why they are the best team in college football because of their depth. And Clemson's defense worn down in that second half. Clemson's offense was non-existent throughout the entire game. They only had 76 yards in the first half. And my big thing when I was watching this game was, where are the skilled position players that Clemson once had? Like a T. Higgins, like a DeAndre Hopkins. It's not there. And so with Clemson, you've got to embrace the transfer portal. Dabo, come on. Because you can't just hit on every single recruit in your recruitment class, because there are going to be times you're going to miss on a left tackle. You're going to miss on a wide receiver. Clemson does not have the skilled position players to go toe-to-toe with the Georgia, and now they are considered still one of the top teams in the ACC. I still think they can win the ACC, but they are not at the level they were when they were a national championship contender going to the college football playoff every year from 2015 to 2019. Those days are over, and Dabo Swinney has got to embrace the transfer portal. Otherwise, he is going to be out of a job. And right now, because this is the worst loss that Dabo Swinney has had since 2013, that I highly believe that he is now on the hot seat. Dabo Swinney, if he doesn't figure this out, will be fired as the Clemson head football coach because he is so stubborn, he won't embrace the transfer portal. Come on, you got to embrace the transfer portal, because if you don't, this game is going to evolve as it already has, and you're going to be left in the dust. Even Nick Saban, when he was coaching, evolved because he realized that a lot of teams were going to the spread offense, and so he went and recruited quarterbacks, and Alabama had 4 straight years of putting quarterbacks in the NFL. So I hope that Dabo Swinney can embrace the transfer portal, but they had a stat on the broadcast that no transfers on Clemson's football team since the transfer portal came into existence in 2018. So my thoughts on a great win by Georgia. And I know that this was one of those wins where, Trevor Etienne didn't even play. Mykel Williams did get hurt on a third down goal line play. Hopefully he's going to be okay. I mean, I think that for precautionary reasons, they took him out of the game. Malachi Starks, what an incredible interception. He might be the best corner in all of college football. And I was very impressed with the freshman running back, Nate Frazier, who came in replace of Trevor Etienne, who just didn't play for some reason. And I also think that Georgia is clearly the best team in college football. I was a little hesitant. I actually picked that Clemson could keep this game close. But Georgia does what Georgia does, and I'm not ready to crown them the next Alabama. I mean, it's going to take some time. What Alabama did for a decade, I don't think it'll ever be duplicated in college football. Speaking of Alabama, The Kalen DeBoer era begins in Tuscaloosa with a bang, and they completely dominated a Western Kentucky team, which I think with the new college football playoff, I don't think teams are going to overlook other teams. Teams that are better than their opponent are going to impose their will on that team, and that's exactly what Alabama did to Western Kentucky. I mean, Jalen Milroe was efficient. 7-9, 200 yards, 3 touchdowns. But the big star for the Crimson Tide was the 17-year-old freshman, Ryan Williams. He's supposed to be a senior in high school. He was a star at Saraland down in the Mobile area. 2 receptions, 139 yards, 2 touchdowns. Alabama has got themselves a star, and he's only 17 years old. That is what's crazy about this. I seriously think that Alabama going into this game, I predicted that TJ Finley was going to maybe move the football on Alabama's defense. And Western Kentucky just doesn't have the players. And when you thought that Alabama was going to take a step back because it's Kalen DeBoer, it's not Nick Saban, Kalen DeBoer is a pretty good coach. He led Washington to the national title game. This is not a drop-off at all. If anything, I think that this could be an upgrade on offense. I said that Alabama's going to be more explosive on offense. Cade Womack's defense, was absolutely solid. And Alabama's proven that even though their preseason AP poll ranking of number 5 was the lowest they've ever been since 2009, that Alabama is one of the top teams in college football. Yes, it was Western Kentucky, but I do expect them to beat South Florida in week 2. I expect them to beat Wisconsin in week 3. The big test will be September the 28th when Alabama hosts Georgia. We have plenty of time to talk that up. We still got 2 more weeks of college football before we can get into that game. All right, the other team that we cover in the Chattahoochee Valley, the team that's 45 miles up the road, the Auburn Tigers. Look, here's the thing. At Auburn, there's really nothing to worry about Hugh Freeze's second year of coaching. My big question mark for Auburn was the development of Peyton Thorne. I still think Peyton Thorne's a really good quarterback. Yes, it was an FCS school. It was Alabama A&M, but Auburn completely imposed their will on Alabama A&M like you're supposed to do against this inferior opponent. You have to do that, and that's what the Auburn Tigers did. I was very impressed with the freshman Cam Coleman, who played wide receiver at Central last year. He had a big impact. I think that Auburn's and Peyton Thorne, he did what he was supposed to do, throwing for 4 touchdowns. And then you also had Cam Coleman ended up getting a touchdown pass from Peyton Thorne in that first quarter, a 44-yard strike. And you also had the run game. It got going. It really got going for Auburn as it was supposed to with Jarquez Hunter. Peyton Thorne had 4 rushes. They did rush as a team for 177 yards, but this was a reflection on the receiving group for Auburn having 451 yards. We said on the show, I know Philip Jordan's come on and said Auburn should start 5-0. If they have an 8-4 season, maybe 9-3, if they can maybe sneak and get one of those wins, maybe against Missouri or Kentucky. But I think that the Auburn Tigers are in good shape. I'm glad that they were able to just impose their will on an inferior opponent, because now you could play your second string team. You can see what you have. You can try new things. And I think that Auburn has proven that they can be ready when it comes to SEC competition. They should beat Cal next week because Cal is awful. I know, I'm from California, and I'm actually saying Cal is terrible. But Auburn should have no problem against the Cal Golden Bears. Then they play New Mexico as well in the next coming weeks. All right, I'm just going to go through these quickly. These are going to be my quick hits. Let's go ahead and talk. Oh, boy. The Florida Gators. This was sad. Miami goes into the swamp and completely demoralizes a Florida Gators team that had probably the toughest schedule in college football. This was a game that the Florida Gators had to win. I think that Billy Napier is going to be fired midseason. This is one of those games where Florida just couldn't handle the physicality and the skill players of the Miami Hurricanes. And it also tells you that the Miami Hurricanes, when they have an NFL-ready quarterback, because Cam Ward is going to be a first-round pick in the NFL draft, when they have the NFL quarterback, they can do a lot of special things with the football. I look at what Mario Cristobal is doing for the Miami Hurricanes. I mean, Xavier Restrepo might be the next slot receiver in the NFL. I think he's going to be the next Hunter Renfrow or the next Wes Welker, because he is just very special. Very high IQ, possession receiver, knows where to go, where the marker is, especially on a big third down. And I was shocked that Graham Mertz just couldn't do anything. He couldn't do anything with the football. This was the 3:30 game. I watched this on ESPN. I think it was on ESPN or ABC. Cam Ward might be a Heisman Trophy contender. 385 yards, 3 touchdowns. He did throw an interception. He was throwing off his back foot. He was trying to make a play. But anytime Cam Ward got into a sticky situation on a third down, he used his legs to move the chains. And I think right now, I know that I don't want to go on a tangent about the Miami Hurricanes, or I don't want to say the U is back. This was a very good win. It was in the swamp, but this is just a testament on how bad Florida is going to be this year. One sports writer said that they could possibly go 2-10. And I actually think next week, Samford might give them a game. This Florida team is awful. The Miami Hurricanes, if Cam Ward becomes a Heisman Trophy contender, if he is showing up in New York in December, I think the Miami Hurricanes can win the ACC and make the college football playoff. That's how much of a difference a quarterback makes in your system. The Miami Hurricanes haven't had an NFL-type quarterback maybe since the early 90s with Gino Torretta. Yeah, they had Ken Dorsey, but he didn't pan out in the NFL. I know that those Miami teams in the early 2000s with Butch Davis and then Larry Coker, I know that those were some great teams, but they didn't really have the special quarterback that Cam Ward is. He might go down as the best skilled quarterback that Miami has ever had. And I know that's saying you got Vinny Testaverde, you got Jim Kelly, you got Bernie Kosar, you got Gino Torretta, you got Craig Walsh or Steve Walsh or whatever. The Miami Hurricanes, I'm not going to say they're back. Let's see how they do against the ACC teams. Let's see how they do against Florida State. I'm very interested to see what they do. All right, other game that I do want to talk about, and when I do these college football reaction shows, I will break down all the teams in and around the Georgia-Alabama area. But when I'm watching college football and I got some quick hitters and I do have some thoughts on some teams that really caught my eye and surprised me, well, the next team, wow, who saw this coming? Vanderbilt beats Virginia Tech 34-27 in overtime. And I actually thought that Vanderbilt was going to be maybe a 2-win program this year, that they would be a doormat in the SEC because statistically they are the worst team in the SEC. Virginia Tech, they haven't really been relevant since Frank Beamer was there. I mean, it's been awful for Virginia Tech. They are definitely not an ACC title contender because you lose to Vandy in Nashville, even though there's probably more Virginia Tech fans there than Vandy fans. Vandy actually pushed them around in that first half. They were up 17-0, and then Virginia Tech woke up and realized we're losing to Vandy. They come back and they take the lead 27-20, and then Vandy ends up tying it. They get the football back. They did miss a field goal at the end of regulation. When I was watching that, I thought Vandy was going to win this. After they missed the field goal, I thought, yeah, I think Virginia Tech's the better team. I think they win in overtime. But Vanderbilt, Diego Pavia gets the 4-yard run. Vanderbilt ends up going ahead, and then the stop to get the win in overtime. And I think that Vanderbilt is going to be maybe a 4-win team now. This was a big win, especially for the SEC. The ACC, with the exception of Miami, up to this point, has not had a great slate of games. Well, with the exception of Georgia Tech, which that's a good segue because I'm going to talk about. Speaking of Georgia Tech, they ended up going to 2-0. I didn't know if they were going to have a hangover from the big win over Florida State in Ireland, having to travel across the country, hosting a very hungry Georgia State team in the head coaching debut of Coach Del McGee. And Georgia State was pretty competitive to start. Georgia State took the first drive all the way down, and Coach McGee, rolled the dice. They go for it on fourth down. I think that this would have been maybe a little bit more closer competitive game if Georgia State was able to punch that in. But Georgia Tech has proven that they are a good team. They should get some votes in the AP Top 25 when it does come out. It will come out on Tuesday after the Florida State-Boston College game. I think with Georgia Tech going to 2-0, they've proven that not only are they a bowl team, an 8-win team, that they are going to be a major player in the ACC when it comes to ACC title contender. I honestly do feel that. And the reason why is because I love Haynes Keene as a quarterback. I think that Haynes Keene has proven that he's a very good quarterback. 35-12 over Georgia State. Haynes Keene had 3 touchdown passes. This was actually the first ever matchup between these two schools, which is really unheard of. Georgia Tech did jump out to that 28-3 lead, but Georgia State did make it close a little bit, 28-12. I thought that you had the quarterback for Georgia State, Christian Valou, who actually did pretty well, and I think that Coach McGee is building something special at Georgia State. They play Chattanooga next week. They host Vanderbilt. That's going to be a fun game. And I do think that they're going to be one of the top teams in the Sun Belt. A lot of experts thought that Georgia State was not going to be one of the top teams in the Sun Belt. And I actually think that that's not going to be the case. I really do think that Georgia State is going to be competing for a Sun Belt title. Possibly with this team, the Troy Trojans, as they fell in a heartbreaker to Nevada at Troy, Alabama, 28-26. And Nevada, they did have the 28-17 lead, and Troy made it interesting. But it's, you got to win these type of games, especially when you're playing at home. I still think Troy has got everything in front of them. They're one of the top teams in the Sun Belt. We'll see how their season goes. Another team, I just want to say a big shout out to WRBL's news director, Rex Castillo, who is a proud alum of UTSA. And he actually messaged me after the result of this game, because the University of Texas at San Antonio Roadrunners, who is, by the way, one of the top teams in the group of 5, they could fight for a group of 5 spot because I think they could go undefeated. Kennesaw State was just running into a buzzsaw. This is their first ever FBS game. A lot of magazines think that Kennesaw State might just be the worst team in college football. This was competitive as Kennesaw State cut it to 21-16. They got the ball back with a chance to maybe take the lead, but their last 3 possessions, fumble, turnover on downs. Owen McNown with 4 touchdown passes, three touchdown passes, 1 touchdown run. Owen McNown with the touchdown pass to seal the game for UTSA. It's tough, especially when you're playing on the road. But I think Kennesaw State will get a couple of wins this year. I don't think they're the worst team in college football. I honestly don't think that. Georgia Southern. Oh, this was a fun game. Boise State, who's also a group of 5 college football playoff contender. We're putting up video game numbers down in Paulson Stadium. Ashton Genty, I should have had him on my college football fantasy roster. If you do play college football, fantasy football, maybe, I don't know. 20 carries, 267 yards, 6 touchdowns. It's like Doug Martin, who? I mean, how did Boise State, who, we all remember Boise State, the glory days of Chris Peterson and Jared Zombrowski and the game against Oklahoma with the lateral and the Statue of Liberty play. But Boise State, very good win, because I do think Georgia Southern is going to be a good team this year. But this was fun. I saw this on ESPNU and down in Paulson Stadium. They've made some upgrades. I mean, Georgia Southern's got a very good fan base. I remember, beating Nebraska. They've beaten Florida. Georgia Southern has played Georgia close. I think that game back in 2015 was the reason why Mark Richt got fired. Georgia Southern has had some moments, but this was a game where Boise State just decided, hey, we're going to take our best player and you try to stop him. And Georgia Southern couldn't. All right, going through the other games. I don't have a graphic for any other games, so I do want to touch up a little bit on Ohio State. They had a slow start. They are the number 2 ranked team in college football. But I do want to say that Jeremiah Smith might be the best freshman in this college football class. Ohio State, it doesn't matter who the quarterback is. It could be Cade McNown. It could be Will Howard. Ohio State knows how to develop skill players. And Jeremiah Smith, Emeka Ibuka, you have your running backs, Travion Henderson and Quishon Junkins. Ohio State's defense came to life, even though I thought that this was going to be one of those games where, Ohio State was sleepwalking just a little bit. But they imposed their will in that third quarter, putting up 21 points, and they ended up beating Akron 52-6. This was 7-3 after the first quarter. But Alabama was tied with the Citadel after a half, 10-10 one time. Sometimes it takes a game like this where you wake up, you realize, hey, we are the better team. We need to dominate. And Ohio State, this is going to be very rare for the Buckeyes. They got an easy schedule until they have to play Michigan State on the road. I still think that's going to be a win. Iowa is going to be at the Horseshoe. That's going to be a win. Not until October the 12th is probably going to be the game of the year when they take on Oregon, which, by the way, Oregon kind of sleptwalk in their game. And this is why you have to not play down to your competition. Oregon only won 24-14 over Idaho. The Notre Dame Texas A&M game was fun, but my thoughts on Mike Elko's debut as the Texas A&M football coach is you got to get the quarterback right. I don't think that Connor Wigan is the guy. I think that Notre Dame's defense was able to shut Texas A&M down. This was a game where Notre Dame was able to put it away, because Jeremiah Love had a big touchdown run to put them up 20-13. Connor Weigman had 2 interceptions. This is not going to get done. Texas A&M, the fan base there, and it's weird because Texas is now in the conference. The fan base there has very high expectations, and those expectations never get met. Maybe Jimbo Fisher wasn't the guy. Obviously, they fired him and they bought him out. But if Mike Elko is the guy, you will know day one, but you got to get the quarterback right. Mike Elko has got to find somebody in there. They've had Haynes King. They've had Max Johnson. Get the quarterback right, Kellen Mond. Not since Johnny Manziel has Texas A&M got the quarterback right. And that's a big deal, especially in today's college football with the NIL and the transfer portal. Speaking of which, Texas has got 2 quarterbacks. That's a problem that, I wish that some teams had, but they don't. Quinn Ewers was phenomenal. 52-0 over Colorado State. Even Arch Manning got into the game and threw for his first touchdown pass. That game, week 2, which I'm circling, that noon kickoff on Fox with Gus Johnson and Joel Klatt, that is going to be some prime football, and I will be there ready to go. Texas and Michigan. Speaking of Michigan, the defending national champions, which I admit I whiffed on this. I called them on upset alert to Fresno State. It started getting a little dicey. They only led 10-3 after the first. They only led 10-3 after the first quarter, and it was 16-10 going into the fourth quarter. But Michigan ends up winning, and Fresno State has always been this team in college football that plays very hard, and they were able to get the victory. How about Arizona putting up 61 on New Mexico? That was a very big game, as you had a wide receiver, Tatoria McMillan, with 304 yards receiving and 4 receiving touchdowns, 10 receptions. Another receiver I want to try to get on my fantasy team, as far as, if we play college fantasy football, which I don't. Some other top 25, as you got Ole Miss, no problem over Furman. Ollie Gordon looked fantastic. Oklahoma State ends up defeating South Dakota State 44-20. Penn State, there was a long lightning delay, but they get the 34-12 victory over West Virginia in Morgantown, as Drew Aller, he could possibly be in New York in December. 3 touchdown passes. And I think that Penn State is going to be a major player in the race for the college football playoff. So my thoughts on week 1, officially week 1 in college football, is nothing's really changed. I know that Georgia, Ohio State, Texas, Alabama are going to be great. I think Oregon drops because you're not supposed to just beat Idaho 24-14. I think that the voters need to punish Oregon for that, and they need to drop behind Alabama. I think that when the AP poll comes out, my top 5, I'm only going to give you my top 5, is going to be Georgia, it's going to be Ohio State, Texas, Alabama, and Ole Miss. That's going to be my top 5. I think that Oregon should be punished for not blowing out Idaho. Anyway, this has been a fun show. When the NFL season starts, I'll have my NFL reaction show that I'm going to air on my Facebook page on Monday. But, these shows I'm going to combine with the shows that I do. And this is going to be part of episode 899 that's going to air on Monday's show. And then get ready, Tuesday, I will have my special 900th edition of the Sports Beat. I don't know if I'm going to have a guest or not. I might just go solo. There's a lot I need to talk about. But stay tuned for Tuesday's show as I have my 900th episode. Don't forget that Thrip Behrens and I will be doing our Georgia Alabama Sports live show, special edition Labor Day, and that is going to be tomorrow. Don't forget, we also got the Kutsu Sports show with Rick Beach, and we also got Unsolicited Hot Take with Thrip Behrens. We've got a lot of shows on the Georgia Alabama Sports Live platform, including this one you can catch on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays starting at noon. Hope everybody has a great rest of your day. Enjoy your Labor Day. Enjoy the remaining week of football, and we will see you